INXS were an Australian rock band, formed as the Farriss Brothers in 1977 in Sydney, New South Wales. They began playing covers in Western Australian pubs and clubs, occasionally mixed with some of their own original music. Mainstays were main composer Andrew Farriss on keyboards, Jon Farriss on drums, Tim Farriss on guitar, Kirk Pengilly on guitar and saxophone, Garry Gary Beers on bass, and main lyricist Michael Hutchence on vocals. For 20 years, INXS were fronted by Hutchence, whose sultry good looks and magnetic stage presence made him the focal point of the band. Initially known for their new wave pop style, they later developed a harder pub rock style, including funk and dance elements. In the early 1980s, INXS first charted in their native Australia with their debut self-titled album, but later garnered moderate success elsewhere with Shabooh Shoobah and a single, The One Thing. Though the swing brought more success from around the world, its single Original Sin was even greater commercially, becoming their first #1 single. They would later achieve international success with a series of hit recordings through later in the 1980s and the 1990s, including the albums Listen Like Thieves, Kick, and X. And the singles, What You Need You Tonight, Devil Inside, New Sensation, and Suicide Blonde. In the 1990s, INXS brought a new audience following Hutchence's romance with pop singer, Kylie Minogue, and achieved greater acclaim in the UK. However, starting with Welcome to Wherever You Are, in 1992, they achieved less success in the United States. Michael Hutchence was found dead in his hotel suite in Sydney in November 1997, and INXS did not perform publicly for a year. They made appearances with several guest singers including Jimmy Barnes, Terence Trent D'Arby, and John Stevens. Stevens formally joined the band for a tour and recording session in 2002. In 2005, members of INXS participated in Rockstar INXS, a reality television series, broadcast worldwide, culminating in the selection of their new lead singer, Canadian J.D. Fortune, and the release of Pretty Vegas, and Afterglow as singles, and its album Switch. In late 2010, they recorded and released Original Sin, a tribute album, featuring guest artists such as Kavian Templey and Ben Harper. In September 2011, the band announced that Northern Irish singer-songwriter Kieran Gribbin had replaced Fortune as their lead vocalist ahead of a planned tour of South America, Australia and Europe later in the year. INXS won 6 Australian Recording Industry Association awards, including 3 for Best Group in 1987, 1989 and 1992, and was inducted into the ARIA Hall of Fame in 2001. As of May 2013, INXS have sold close to 40 million records worldwide. On November 11, 2012, during their performance as support act to Matchbox 20 at Perth Arena, Australia, INXS announced that the performance would be their last. History. Early years. The origins of the band began with Andrew Farriss convincing his fellow Davidson High School classmate, Michael Hutchence, to join his band, Dr. Dolphin. The band contained 2 other classmates, Kent Kearney and Neil Sanders, and a bass player, Garry Beers and Jeff Kenley, from a nearby high school, Forest High School. In 1977, Tim Farriss, Andrew's older brother, invited Andrew, Hutchence and Beers to join him and his schoolmate Kirk Pengilly. Tim and Pengilly had been playing together since 1971 as either an acoustic duo, Kirk and Tim, or as a 4-piece band called Guinness. Together with younger brother Jon Farriss, they formed the Farriss Brothers, who consisted of Garry Beers on bass guitar, Andrew Farriss on keyboards, Jon Farriss on drums, Tim Farriss on lead guitar, Jeff Kenley on drums, Michael Hutchence on lead vocals, and Kirk Pengilly on guitar and saxophone. The band made their debut on August 16, 1977 at Whale Beach, 40 km north of Sydney. Andrew Farriss remembers, "I thought the show went really well, but I think my dad summed it up the next day, great show, but everyone was asleep when we left. I think everyone might have been stoned." The parents of the Farriss boys relocated to Perth, Western Australia in 1978, taking Jon to continue his schooling, and, as soon as Hutchence and Andrew finished school, the rest of the band followed. They briefly performed as the Vegetables, singing We Are the Vegetables, before returning to Sydney 10 months later, where they recorded a set of demos. At a chance meeting in the car park of the Narrabeen Antler, a pub in Narrabeen on the northern beaches of Sydney, New South Wales, Tim was approached by Gary Morris, the manager of Midnight Oil. I remember him coming up to me and saying, "Who are you working for, mate?" And I kind of went, "Oh, we have this band and we're called the Farriss Brothers." He offered to give us some work supporting Midnight Oil on the spot. The band began to regularly support Midnight Oil and other local bands. Morris advised that a member of the Oil's crew had come up with a new name and suggested they change it to INXS. The name INXS was inspired by English band XTC and Australian jam makers IXL. I saw a commercial for a brand of jam called IXL. Their ad featured a guy who said, "I excel in all I do." I'd recently seen the English band XTC when they toured Australia, and I loved their name, XTC a Euro Ecstasy. In that moment, I put all those thoughts together. The name needed to be letters, but make a word. I put the IXL Jam commercial together with XTC and the concept of a band that was inaccessible, and I had it, INXS. Pengilly explained that Morris had some other ideas. Gary, Morris was a great marketer, and I think he also had this idea of us being inaccessible. He said we could be on stage in a cage of lights. It was a mystery thing. He told us that unless we wanted to change our ways and become the world's biggest Christian band, he could no longer manage us. He wanted us to write songs about Christ and to promote a drug and alcohol-free and no sex before marriage, proper Christian lifestyle. He was very convincing, and for a moment I think we might have done it. Then he got on to Strange Terrain. We thought that would be a bit much a Euro, but it was a good name. The band's first performance as INXS was on September 1, 1979 at the Ocean Beach Hotel in Umina on the central coast of New South Wales, and by the end of 1979, after passing on the Christian band image, they hired Chris C.M. Murphy as their manager and continued taking on the Oz pub circuit. The night Morris offered them to me, I told him I'd take them midway through their third song. I stood there thinking, this is pretty funky. This kid up front is pretty weird. This band plays really, really well. What Morris didn't realize was that I only intended to take them on as their booking agent. I didn't want to be their manager. Murphy was an adept business manager and negotiator. By early 1980 the band had signed a 5-album record deal with a Sydney independent label, Deluxe Records, run by Michael Browning, a former manager of AC/DC, 1980s, From Simple Simon to Shabooh Shoobah. INXS released their first single, Simple Simon / We Are the Vegetables, in Australia and France in May 1980. The single had its debut TV performance on Simon Townsend's Wonderworld. Their self-titled debut album, INXS, was recorded at Trafalgar Studios in Annandale, Sydney. It was co-produced by the band and Duncan Maguire, with all songs attributed to the entire band, at the insistence of Murphy. Deluxe gave them a budget of $10,000 to record the album, so to keep within the budget they had to record from midnight to dawn, usually after doing one or more performances earlier that night. The album was released in October 1980. It featured Just Keep Walking, which was their first Australian top 40 single, with the album peaking in the top 30 of the Kent Music Report for Australian albums. The album eventually went gold, but it took a number of years to do so. I'm not a great fan of the first album. It's Norvay and kinda cute, almost. It's these young guys struggling for a sound. All I can hear is what was going to happen later, and it's probably an interesting album because of that. Just Keep Walking was the first time we thought we'd written a song. And that became an anthem around town. It's funny, I remember kids in pubs saying it and hearing it on the radio the first time. We'd never heard that before. These early records demonstrated their new wave of pop style, and were followed by near-constant touring with almost 300 shows during 1981 as the band developed their status as a live act. After a year of playing pub gigs, I made sure that INXS only did tours, whether it was just a few cities or across the whole of Australia. We chose a theme, made posters, printed t-shirts, and gave it a mood that created excitement. It made an INXS show into an event, not just another pub gig. In 1981, they signed Gary Grant as their tour manager, who then became co-manager a year later. Between touring commitments, the band released their third single in May 1981, The Loved One, which was a cover of a 1966 song by Australian group The Loved Ones. The song was recorded at Studios 301 in Sydney, produced by Richard Clapton, and peaked in the top 20. Richard had never produced before and wasn't sure if he wanted to. I didn't care. I knew his songwriting capabilities would be a good influence to give INXS more structure. In the early days the band would jam in rehearsal until a song just happened. Then they'd stand in front of an audience and play that song and see whether or not the audience jumped around. Then they'd go back and chop it up until it worked. And if it continued to work live, they'd go and record it. The success of the single led to Clapton and the band returning to Studio 301 between July and August 1981 to create an album. In October 1981, their second album Underneath the Colours was released and became a hit in Australia, peaking at No. 15. I was completely enamored with them. I really thought that they could become one of the biggest bands in the world, completely out of nowhere. I mean, at that point, they didn't even have an audience. Most of the songs on Underneath the Colours were written in a relatively short space of time. Most bands shudder at the prospect of having 20 years to write their first album and 4 days to write their second. For us, though, it was good. It left less room for us to go off on all sorts of tangents. Soon after recording sessions had finished, band members started work on outside projects. Beers, Jon and Andrew Farriss played on Clapton's solo album, The Great Escape. Hutchence recorded Speed Kills, written by Don Walker of Cold Chisel for the soundtrack of the film Freedom directed by Scott Hicks. It was his first solo single and was released by WEA in early 1982. In January, INXS toured New Zealand as support act for Cold Chisel. Band manager, Murphy, became convinced their future no longer lay with Deluxe Records. RCA had employed music lover Rocky and Rod Woods, who had been promoting Eric Clapton, Split Enz and some of the world's biggest acts. Woods was passionate about the band and brought key music people along to their gigs. He encouraged RCA to sign them worldwide because Murphy had played him some demos of future songs. Deluxe had been unable to attract international interest, and decided to record a new song, The One Thing at their own expense, with Mark Oppius at Paradise Studios. The song turned out so well that Murphy hired Oppius to produce 3 more songs. Murphy approached WEA Australia with copies of the song, leading to INXS signing a recording deal in July 1982 with WEA for releases in Australia, Southeast Asia, Japan and New Zealand, Atco Records for North America and Polygram for Europe and the UK. INXS got signed not because some A&R guy thought we'd sell a lot of records, but because we sold out so many venues. Murphy and the band weren't entirely convinced that Oppius could produce an entire album that would attract international interest, so prior to recording their third album Pengilly, Hutchence and Andrew Farriss visited the UK and USA, with a view to selecting a suitable producer, only to find that no one they wanted was available and that most people advised them that Oppius's work on their single was as good as they could wish for. Bob Clearmountain said to us, "I love your music and I would definitely work with you guys, but I don't have any ideas better than the guy who recorded these for you. The best advice I have for you is to go back to Australia and record the whole album with him." In mid-1982, they commenced recording at Rhinoceros Studios, with Oppius. Mark was the first producer that was able to capture some glimmer of what the band felt it was like live. Prior to us, Mark had done bands like AC/DC, Cold Chisel, The Angels. Big guitar sounds, mighty drum beats. In October 1982, Shabooh Shoobah was released internationally on Atlantic Atco Records, peaking at No. 52 on the US Billboard 200 and No. 46 on the Hot Pop Albums chart. In Australia it peaked at no. 5 and remained in the album's charts for 94 weeks. The single The One Thing brought them their first top 30 hit in United States, peaking at no. 30 on May 28, 1983. It was a top 20 hit in Canada, and peaked at no. 14 in Australia on August 23, 1982. One Thing was their first video to air on the fledgling MTV and significantly added to the ultimate success of the single. INXS undertook their first U.S. performance in San Diego in March 1983, to a crowd of 24 patrons. Their first tour was as support for Adam and the Ants, then support for Stray Cats, The Kinks, Hall & Oates, followed by the Go-Go's. INXS played alongside many of their contemporaries on New Wave Day in May 1983, at the U.S. Festival in Devore, California. It was during this time that Grant, their co-manager, relocated permanently to New York to ensure a continual presence in the Northern Hemisphere. The band remained on the road in the U.S. for most of the year, including support for Men at Work, and by mid-1983 were headlining venues such as the Ritz in New York. From Original Sin to Listen Like Thieves, following a performance in Toronto, Canada, the band was approached by producer Nile Rodgers, and by September 1983, recorded Original Sin, originally titled Brand New Day, at New York's Power Station Studios. We were fresh off the road, so we had the basic song completed and we'd been playing it live in the set. He was talking to us through the headphones, kind of saying things that were meant to encourage us, and we figured he was just getting levels and stuff on the whole band playing together, but after we'd run it down a couple of times he said, "Okay, come in and have a listen." We went in and the control room was sort of full of people dancing. Apart from adding background vocals and the sax solo, we were finished. We didn't even know he was recording. 3 tracks from Shabooh Shoobah were featured in the soundtrack for the 1984 film Reckless. The band then travelled to the UK to begin sessions on their 4th album with Nick Launey at the Manor Studios in Oxford. Nick was always going to be the main production force behind the swing. We had a really genuine interest in the stuff that he had done and we knew he was the right guy for us at the time. It was funny, actually, because we arrived at the Manor, which is up in Oxford, and we basically walked in and said, "Nick, we've recorded one song for the album." And he was like, "Oh yeah, where did you do that?" And we said, "New York." "Who'd you do it with?" "Nile Rodgers." And his face just went white because he was a major Nile Rodgers fan himself. So he said, "Well, suppose we'd better listen to it," and we put it on and he was just blown away. I think that started poor old Nick off on a bit of he wasn't as secure and confident as he probably would have been. The album The Swing, released in April 1984, received more significant attention from around the world, as Original Sin became their first No. 1 single and was a highly popular song worldwide with fans and reviewers. During 1984 it was No. 1 in Australia as well as in Argentina and France, No. 6 in New Zealand, No. 11 in Canada, No. 23 in Switzerland, No. 31 in the Netherlands and No. 58 in the US. Yet Original Sin was largely ignored in the UK, where INXS was described in New Musical Express as a depressingly definitive example of excruciating, boring, incredibly unimaginative MTV rock, and INXS didn't have any top 50 chart success until the 1985 album Listen Like Thieves. During 1984, INXS toured non-stop, performing across Europe, the UK, the US and Australia, and by December 1984, The Swing was double platinum, making it, at the time, one of the 5 biggest domestic albums in the history of Australian music. In March 1985 the band re-entered Sydney's Rhinoceros Studios to record their next album, together with producer Chris Thomas. Chris was one of the most talented, most eccentric and demanding people you'd ever want to meet. From the moment you walked into the control room, there was no doubt you were in the presence of greatness. INXS met their match with Chris Thomas. He was the only producer they've ever had who told them what they needed to hear. "This is what we've been trying to do one way or another for a few years now, that is to make an album that is purely just form and function of the songs. It has no artistic pretensions." As the band were finishing the recording sessions, Thomas told the band that the album was not good enough and still had no killer track. We'd already finished the Listen Like Thieves album, but Chris Thomas told us there was still no hit. We left the studio that night knowing we had one day left and we had to deliver a hit. Talk about pressure. Andrew produced a demo tape of a funk song he had been working on, funk song No A13, and evolved it into What You Need. Then Andrew brought in 3 demos, a 2 songs that had been completed, and he played me a thing that was just this riff, a dink, dink, dink-a-dink, and it was great. I thought, I could listen to that groove for 10 minutes. I said, let's work with that groove. So we went with that, and in just 2 days it turned into the song that eventually broke them, What You Need. We wrote it on Saturday, rehearsed it on Sunday and recorded it on Monday. Whilst the band was recording, WEA released Decadence, a limited edition 12 inches vinyl and cassette-only EP of in-ex-ESS remixes from their albums The Swing and Shabooh Shoobah. On May 19, 1985, in-ex-ESS won 7 awards at the 1984 Countdown Music and Video Awards ceremony. They performed Burn For You, Dressed in Acapras and Dries Bones. They performed 5 songs for the July 1985 Oz for Africa concert, in conjunction with the Live Aid benefit. 2 in-ex-ESS songs, What You Need, and Don't Change, were also in the BBC broadcast and are contained on Live Aid's 4 DVD boxed set released in 2004. in-ex-ESS had started out as a new wave act, gradually moved in a more straight-ahead rock-oriented direction through the first half of the 1980s. Listen Like Thieves was released in October 1985, was approved of by critics, reaching no A3 on the Australian charts and no A11 on the US charts. With the release of Listen Like Thieves, the band had developed a rock sound influenced by Led Zeppelin and XTC, but remained true to the band's original roots in Aussie pubs. It was also the first album to feature songs written by a combination of band members, with Andrew Farriss and Hutchence becoming the primary songwriters in the years to follow. The first US single from the album, This Time, stalled at no A81 in late 1985, but the next single, What You Need, released there in early 1986, became a top 5 Billboard's hit, bringing in-ex-ESS their first breakout US success. The single was also a top 20 hit in Canada, reached no A2 in Australia but only no A51 on the UK charts. The British press dismissed the album, with New Musical Express calling the band inexcusable and a reviewer declaring Listen Like Thieves to be a complete and utter turkey. In the United States, however, Rolling Stone magazine wrote in-ex-ESS rocks with passion and seals the deal with a backbeat that'll blackmail your feet. In August 1985, they toured ahead of the album's release, touring South America before returning to Melbourne to play for Prince Charles and Princess Diana of Wales at a concert in Australia. It was filmed and later released on home video entitled Living in-ex-ESS. An edited version of the concert was played on MTV in the US in 1985 on their Saturday night concert series. In November, December, January, and February, in-ex-ESS toured North America, Europe, and New Zealand. The band then took a 2-month break, with Andrew Farriss writing and producing You're Gonna Get Hurt for Jenny Morris, and Hutchence featuring in Richard Lowenstein's second feature film Dogs in Space. Lowenstein had previously made the video clip for Dancing on the Jetty. Whilst a song from the movie, Rooms for the Memory, written by Ollie Olsen, with vocals by Hutchence charted, the movie was received well by critics but was not a commercial success. In May 1986, the band returned to the United States and over the next 6 months performed 32 European shows, including support for Queen at their Live at Wembley 86 concert on July 12, 42 US shows and 12 Australian shows. America's influential musician magazine calling them the best live band in the world. From Good Times to Kick. Whilst supposedly taking an 8-month break before beginning work on a new album, their manager Murphy decided to stage a series of major outdoor concerts across Australia, featuring in-ex-ESS, Jimmy Barnes, Models, The Divinyls, Mental as Anything, The Triffids and I'm Talking. To promote the tour, in-ex-ESS recorded 2 songs with Jimmy Barnes of Cold Chisel, the Easterbeats cover Good Times, and Laying Down the Law, which Barnes co-wrote with Beers, Andrew Farriss, Jon Farriss, Hutchence and Pengilly. Good Times was used as the theme song for the Australian-made series of concerts in the summer of 1986 and 1987. It peaked at No. 2 on the Australian charts, and months later was featured in the Joel Schumacher film The Lost Boys and its soundtrack, allowing it to peak at No. 47 in the US on August 1, 1987. After the success of What You Need and Listen Like Thieves, the band knew their new material would have to be even better, according to Pengilly. We wanted an album where all the songs were possible singles. They recorded Kick in Sydney and Paris. It was produced by Thomas again, but Atlantic Records was not happy with the result, as manager Chris Murphy remembers. They hated it, absolutely hated it. They said there was no way they could get this music on rock radio. They said it was suited for black radio, but they didn't want to promote it that way. The president of the label told me that he'd give $1 million to go back to Australia and make another album. Despite Atlantic's protests, Kick was released in October 1987 and provided the band with worldwide popularity. It peaked at No. 1 in Australia, No. 3 on the US Billboard 200, No. 9 in UK, and No. 15 in Austria. It was an upbeat, confident album that yielded 4 top 10 US singles, New Sensation, Never Tear Us Apart, Devil Inside, and No. 1 Need You Tonight. Need You Tonight peaked No. 2 on the UK charts, No. 3 in Australia, and No. 10 in France. They toured heavily behind the album throughout 1987 and 1988. The video for the 1987 in-ex-ESS track Mediate replicated the format of Bob Dylan's video for Subterranean Homesick Blues, even in its use of apparently deliberate errors. In September 1988 the band swept the MTV Video Music Awards with the video for Need You Tonight Mediate winning in 5 categories. During 1989, Hutchence collaborated with Ian Ollie Olsen on a side project, Max Q. The two had previously worked together on Lowenstein's film Dogs in Space. The rest of the band also took a break to work on side projects, but soon returned to the studio to record their follow-up album to Kick, 1990 to 1997, From X to Elegantly Wasted. In October 1990, in-ex-ESS released X, which was produced by Thomas again, and it peaked at No. 3 in Australia, No. 5 in the US, No. 2 in the UK, No. 5 in Switzerland and No. 10 in Sweden. It followed in the same vein as Kick, and added harmonica to some songs. X scored hits with Suicide Blonde and Disappear. Suicide Blonde peaked at No. 2 in Australia, No. 11 in the UK and in Switzerland. Other singles from X were Bitter Tears and By My Side, but they had less chart success. Hutchence's romance with Australian pop singer Kylie Minogue brought the group a new audience of fans. in-ex-ESS performed at Wembley Stadium on July 13, 1991, during their Summer XS tour stop in London to a sold-out audience of 74,000 fans. This performance was recorded and filmed to become their live album Live Baby Live, which was released in November 1991 and peaked in the top 30 in both Australia and UK album charts, but had less success on the Billboard 200. On March 28, 1992, in-ex-ESS performed at the controversial Concert for Life at Centennial Park in Sydney, together with Crowded House, Youth Yindi, Jenny Morris, Diesel, Rat Cat and Def FX. Due to inclement weather, the expected attendance of 100,000 never came through, and the event only raising $500,000. Welcome to Wherever You Are, produced by Mark Opus and released in August 1992, was an experimental album using sitars and a 60-piece orchestra while adding a much more raw sound to their music. It received good critical reviews and went No. 1 in the UK and in Sweden, No. 2 in Australia and Switzerland, and No. 3 in Norway, but had less chart success in the US, peaking at No. 16. Singles from the album included Taste It and Baby Don't Cry, which were top 20 successes in UK but had less success in US or Australian markets. Full Moon, Dirty Hearts, produced by Opus again, was released in November 1993 and peaked at No. 3 on the UK charts, No. 4 in Australia, No. 8 in Sweden, No. 9 in Switzerland, No. 14 in Norway. but did not reach the top 50 in the US. The title track featured the Pretenders' Crazy Hint, and another track, Please, featured Ray Charles. The band made a full video album for the record using unknown Australian students to direct with help by Richard Lowenstein. Full Moon, Dirty Hearts received mixed reviews and was the last record under INXS contract with Atlantic in the States. The band took time off to rest and be with their families, while Hutchence remained in the public eye through modeling and film acting. In 1997, the group released a comeback album titled Elegantly Wasted, which garnered mixed reviews. It fared respectably in Australia, Canada, France, UK, Belgium, Switzerland, but only no A41 in US. On November 22, 1997, Hutchence was found dead in his Sydney Ritz-Carlton hotel room. On February 6, 1998, after an autopsy and coronial inquest, New South Wales State Coroner, Derek Hand, presented his report which ruled that Hutchence's death was a suicide while depressed and under the influence of drugs and alcohol. Despite the official coroner's report, there was continued speculation that his death was accidental. 1997 to 2003, transitional years. After Hutchence's death, INXS did not perform publicly for almost a year and then only made a few one-off performances with different guest singers until 2000. On November 28, 1998, he played at the Mushroom 25 concert with Jimmy Barnes fronting for two songs, The Loved One, and Good Times. On June 12, 1999, they headlined the opening of Stadium Australia in Sydney, with US singer-songwriter Terence Trent D'Arby and Russell Hitchcock as guest vocalist. They performed new sensation, Kick, Never Tear Us Apart, and What You Need. In December 2000, INXS performed a concert with singers Suze DeMarchi and John Stevens sharing the spotlight. Former lead singer of Australian band Noiseworks, John Stevens began singing with INXS on regular basis. He played as one of the headline acts at the Sydney 2000 Olympics and then toured through South America and Europe. Stevens was officially named a member of INXS in 2002 and they started recording new material in November. Stevens left in October 2003 to pursue a solo career, only recording a contractual obligation song called I Get Up. This was not officially released as a charting single due to it being part of the game EA Sports Rugby 2004. All sales of this single were not tallied in comparison to the ARIA charts of the time. The song was used in the Rugby Union World Cup 2003 and the EA Sports Rugby 2004 video game. 2004 to 2005, Rockstar INXS. INXS returned to the news in 2004, when it was announced that a new reality television program titled Rockstar INXS would feature a contest to find a new lead vocalist for the band. The show, which had its debut on the CBS network July 11, 2005, featured 15 contestants vying for the position of lead singer. The show was executive produced by Survivor's Mark Burnett and hosted by Brooke Burke and James Addiction and former Red Hot Chili Peppers guitarist Dave Navarro. On September 20, 2005, J.D. Fortune of Salt Springs, Nova Scotia, Canada won the 11-week competition, which culminated in his singing the Rolling Stones' You Can't Always Get What You Want, and INXS, What You Need in the finale of the show to become the new lead singer of INXS. With Fortune they recorded their 2005 album, Switch, produced by Guy Chambers, and went on a world tour in 2006. Runner-up Marty Casey was the opening act during the first leg of the tour, along with his band, the Love Hummers. During the Rockstar INXS competition, the contestants were challenged to write the lyrics and melody to music written by Andrew Farriss. Originally this challenge was divided up into two teams. When Fortune did not see eye to eye with his team, he decided to venture out on his own and write his own lyrics. At first Fortune's move seemed to have doomed his chances to win the competition, but it was this move that resulted in his creation of the lyrics to Pretty Vegas. This song became a favorite of both fans and INXS and played a major role in Fortune being able to win the competition. Pretty Vegas was released October 4, 2005 and reached no. 5 on the iTunes Store ranking of daily most downloaded songs on its first day. It peaked at No. 9 in Australia, No. 37 on the Billboard Hot 100, and became a huge radio airplay hit in Fortune's native Canada. 2005 to 2010, J.D. Fortune era. On November 29, 2005, the band's first album with Fortune as lead singer, titled Switch, was released in the United States via Epic Records. This new lineup started touring in support of Switch in January 2006. Fortune revealed he was working on material for the next in-ex-ESS album, but it would turn out that Fortune's songs would later appear on his solo album. In September 2006, in-ex-ESS and Epic Records parted ways. The band then performed at the 2006 NRL Grand Final. in-ex-ESS toured Australia and New Zealand in March 2007, with Simple Minds and support band Arrested Development. After the cancellation of an August 31, 2007 show in Cleveland, Ohio, in-ex-ESS placed a statement on their website stating due to ongoing medical issues with Garry Beers' hand, the band's doctor has urged the band to not play more than 3 shows in a row or risk permanent damage to Gary's hand. The band signed with Petrol Electric Records in December 2008, reuniting them with former manager Chris Murphy. The band were preparing to enter the studio in March 2009 to record a new project without a singer. On February 16, 2009, J.D. Fortune told Entertainment Tonight Canada that in-ex-ESS had let him go from the band with a shake of the hand at an airport in Hong Kong. Fortune also admitted to becoming addicted to cocaine during his stint with the band. On February 23, 2009, Chris Murphy, in-ex-ESS creative director and global business strategist and former manager, in an interview with the Daily Telegraph, said J.D. was not sacked and, in fact, the band made it known to him that they had not ruled out seeing a return by Fortune. He also stated J.D. was next on his list to call regarding a major recording contract he was negotiating for the band. In an interview with Confidential on March 1, 2009, Murphy stated the whole thing has been bizarre. He was basically a contractor and his contract had ended. Speaking with Billboard, Murphy stated that he would rather part ways with the band than work with Fortune. If the band said to me tomorrow, we'd still like you to make that call and talk to him about working on a project, I'd have to say sorry, I have to go. However, J.D. Fortune toured with in-ex-ESS as frontman in February 2011. In an interview with Sun Media published on March 6, 2009, J.D. Fortune clarified his claim that he had been fired at an airport. After returning to Canada from Hong Kong, Fortune believed there were still 2 more legs of the in-ex-ESS 2007 tour to complete. When the rest of the tour was cancelled and the band did not return his calls for 10 months, he believed he was out of the band. On November 30, 2009, Andrew Farriss, Jon Farriss, and Kirk Pengilly performed an acoustic version of Don't Change with the Qantas Choir at the Pride of Australia Awards. On December 8, 2009, in-ex-ESS announced they would be embarking on a large-scale world tour, commencing with a performance in Vancouver for the 2010 Olympic Winter Games. The band announced on February 11, 2010 that J.D. Fortune would be vocalist for the performance at the 2010 Winter Olympics, but that it would be a one-off performance with Fortune, with a vocalist for the subsequent world tour still to be announced. The band performed at the Vancouver 2010 Winter Olympics on February 24, 2010 with guest singers J.D. Fortune and Argentine singer Deborah de Corral. On April 22, 2010, in-ex-ESS announced that Fortune would again front the band for a performance on July 10, 2010 at Townsville, QLD, Australia, and then again on July 16, 2010 in Broome, WA, Australia. During a radio interview with Kirk Pengilly and J.D. Fortune in July 2010 just before the Broome concert, Pengilly confirmed that Fortune had returned as the band's permanent singer. In August 2010, Petrol Records issued Australian radio stations with a 1-track promo Never Tear Us Apart featuring Ben Harper on vocals, a preview from the upcoming in-ex-ESS Michael Hutchence tribute album Original Sin. On September 25, 2010, the band performed prior to the 2010 AFL Grand Final. On October 19, 2010, it was announced in the Courier Mail that in-ex-ESS, fronted by J.D. Fortune, would tour as part of the A-Day on the Green Winery concerts in February. The band recorded an album in memory of Michael Hutchence titled Original Sin, which was released in November 2010. The album featured well-known singers from Australia and around the world. Brandon Flowers of the band The Killers revealed that he recorded the song Beautiful Girl with the band, although the track ultimately did not appear on the album due to conflicts with the release of Flowers' solo album. Rob Thomas from the band Matchbox 20 recorded the song Never Tear Us Apart, and Original Sin with the band, although only Original Sin with DJ Leeds appeared on the final album. Australian singer-songwriter Vanessa Amorosi has also been reported to have recorded a version of Devil Inside, although that recording did not appear on the final album. Ben Harper recorded a version of Devil Inside along with Nick Acosta, and Harper also performed Never Tear Us Apart. Gabriel Simi, Tricky, and Eskimo Joe's Cavian Temple also recorded tracks for the project. Deborah De Corral performed New Sensation on the album. Patrick Minahan of Train recorded Beautiful Girl. On Again Off Again lead singer J.D. Fortune performs lead vocals for the 1991 track The Stairs and the 1984 track Lovers. The album was produced by James Ash of Rogue Traders, 2011 to 2012, a group in flux. In March 2011 in-ex-ESS confirmed they would be returning to the UK and headlining with support from New Zealand band Shahad for an outdoor event on Clapham Common, London on Saturday 11 June called Southern Sounds. The event was an all-Australian, New Zealand and South African celebration line-up with in-ex-ESS fronted by J.D. Fortune. Following a large turnout for fellow Southern Hemisphere rockers Shahad, in-ex-ESS eventually performed to a small crowd of 800 to 1,000 people. The large-capacity big-ticket venues of the past replaced by smaller resourced events with poorer quality sound systems in temporary event public spaces did not seem to diminish the band. Strong winds began swaying the single-columned speakers through in-ex-ESS set and the sound quality to festival-goers was severely compromised with lead vocals dropping out for large swathes of the gig. Other acts on the day included Goldfish, I Am Giant, DJ Yoda, Adam Freeland, Crafty Cuts, Freestylers, Eddie Temple Morris, Utah Saints, Rennie Pilgrim, Cape Fear, Woodsy, Rob Diverted, Reveal, and Honeycomb. in-ex-ESS toured extensively throughout 2011 with singer J.D. Fortune to support the album Original Sin. The band released a demo of a song, called Tiny Summer, in streaming format on their official website in September 2011, along with news that J.D. Fortune had left the band again and that Northern Irish singer-songwriter Kieran Gribbin would be the band's frontman for their forthcoming tour of Australia, South America and Europe in November and December 2011. Kieran Gribbin and in-ex-ESS recorded more material. A demo of another song titled We Are United appeared on their website. Other new songs were also played live in July 2012 in Australia, such as Honesty, Tears of Rain, and Dancing Like a Flame. Sugar, an unreleased song from the John Stevens era, was brought back too. On October 6, 2012, in-ex-ESS were the headline act at the annual charity ball organised by the Hong Kong Foreign Correspondents Club. in-ex-ESS announced during a concert on November 11, 2012, at the newly opened Perth Arena, while supporting Matchbox 20, that they would no longer be touring. Kirk Pengilly stated that it was appropriate to finish where they had started 35 years earlier. Jon Farriss admitted, "I'm getting teary," before the band performed their biggest hit, Need You Tonight. Television mini-series. In 2013, television network, 7 Network Australia, announced that it is producing a mini-series focusing on the band's behind-the-scenes stories, called in-ex-ESS, Never Tear Us Apart. Band member Tim Farriss is a pre-production consultant on the show. The mini-series commenced production at the end of June 2013, and premiered on February 9, 2014 and the finale aired the following Sunday night. The mini-series rated very highly for both nights and created a renewed interest in the band which translated to a resurgence in sales of their music, bringing them once again to the #1 position on the Australian popular music charts. Luke Arnold is cast as Michael Hutchence. Alex Williams plays Kirk Pengilly, Newcomer Nicholas Masters plays Tim Farriss, Hugh Sheridan plays bass guitarist Garry Beers, Ido Drent is Jon Farriss and Andy Ryan is Andrew Farriss, Damon Herriman plays band manager C.M. Murphy and Samantha Jade is cast as Kylie Minogue. Given the popularity of this TV miniseries and subsequent re-emergence, there is talk of a Broadway musical and a feature film in the upcoming future. Influence and recognition. Throughout the 1980s and into the 1990s, INXS was a major force in Australian popular music, leading the way into worldwide popularity for several Australian bands. The band worked closely with several other Australian artists, such as models and expatriate New Zealander Jenny Morris, helping to establish their careers. By the mid-1990s, however, their popularity had waned, especially in the US, where their greatest hits compilation failed to reach the top 100. INXS has won 6 other ARIA awards including 3 for Best Group in 1987, 1989 and 1992. The band has also received 3 Grammy nominations over their 30-year career. In 2007, the Farriss Brothers were inducted into the West Australian Music Industry Awards Hall of Fame. According to the Recording Industry Association of America, INXS have sold 15 million units in the United States alone, making them the 3rd highest-selling Australian music act in the United States, behind AC/DC and the Bee Gees. Members: Garry Beers, a Euro bass guitar, double bass, backing vocals; Andrew Farriss, a Euro keyboards, guitar, backing vocals; Jon Farriss, a Euro drums, keyboards, backing vocals; Tim Farriss, a Euro lead guitar, backing vocals; Kirk Pengilly, a Euro rhythm guitar, saxophone, backing vocals; Michael Hutchence, a Euro lead vocals; other vocalists: Jimmy Barnes, a Euro lead vocals; Terence Trent D'Arby, a Euro lead vocals; John Stevens, a Euro lead vocals; J.D. Fortune, a Euro lead vocals; Kieran Gribbin, a Euro lead vocals. Discography: for a complete discography, see INXS discography. INXS, Underneath the Colors, Shabooh Shoobah, The Swing, Listen Like Thieves, Kick, X, Welcome to Wherever You Are, Full Moon, Dirty Hearts, Elegantly Wasted, Switch, Original Sin. Awards and nominations. INXS has won and been nominated for numerous music awards. These include ARIA Awards, Grammys, MTV Awards. ARIA Awards. INXS has won 7 Australian Recording Industry Association awards. The band was inducted into the ARIA Hall of Fame in 2001 alongside the Saints. This induction recognised their achievement of a significant body of recorded work, and that they had a cultural impact within Australia. INXS has won 6 other ARIA awards including 3 for Best Group in 1987, 1989 and 1992. Countdown Awards. Countdown was an Australian pop music TV series on national broadcaster ABC TV from 1974 a Euro 1987, it presented music awards from 1979 a Euro 1987, initially in conjunction with magazine TV Week but then independently. The Countdown Music and Video Awards were succeeded by the ARIA Awards. INXS won 7 awards at the 1984 awards ceremony, which was broadcast on May 25, 1985. On April 20, 1986 they won 3 further Countdown Awards for 1985. Grammy Awards. INXS received 3 nominations for the Grammys. MTV Video Music Awards. INXS won 5 MTV Video Music Awards for their 1988 song Need You Tonight Mediate. Brit Awards. Notes: the video was directed by Richard Lowenstein. Nomination to Niven Garland for engineering INXS tracks Baby Don't Cry, Heaven Sent, and Taste It. The video was directed by Richard Lowenstein. Award was shared between Richard Lowenstein for the INXS video Burn For You, and B-Sharp Productions for Mental as Anything video Apocalypso. Award to Richard Lowenstein and Lynn Marie Milburn for the INXS video, What You Need. See also. References. External links, official website, INXS discography at Billboard, INXS discography at Music Brains, INXS a Euro the band at H2G2, INXS at DMOZ.